So, I'm really honoured to introduce our final speaker of the day before we move into our panel, Michael Mallett from Medallia. Where are you, Michael? Oh, you're there, you're there. Michael's going to be talking to us about continuous employee listening and making this work and making the digital experience matter. Michael, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And as a digital guy, we'll see how I do with the clicker. No promises. And I'm inspired by many of you today. Thank you so much for sharing your stories and being such a great crowd. And a lot of the best practices that you've all talked about, creating the cultures, really helping employees evolve, be who they are, right? Give their full selves. There's a lot of what we would cover as well at Medallia. And if you're not familiar with Medallia, we've been around for over 20 years in customer and employee experience management, working with companies like Bank of America, Johnson & Johnson, and Microsoft, and as well as many others that hopefully we get to work with you. But what I want to push us into is an area that is an area of innovation in digital channels, digital technologies, things that we use today and use at home. So this is my first live event in 3 years. So it's so nice to be outside of a computer. And I want to talk about how we can take everything that you've talked about today and we can unlock all of those insights and change through digital channels. So as I go through that, quick poll the audience. I'm last, so I'm going to see if we still got that employee engagement. 2 quick questions. In the last 30 days, who has taken a customer experience survey? Maybe you've bought something or stayed at a hotel or had some feedback about a phone call. Who's taken a customer experience survey? Right, so I always take that mental note when they use another company other than us, but I appreciate that my credit card company asked me how I thought and felt, so I gave them that feedback anyway. So same question, who's taken an employee feedback survey in the last 30 days? Okay, about the same number of hands, which is no surprise in this crowd, but if we were to poll the audience outside of this crowd, I would see a lot less hands to that question. And we've heard all sorts of reasons as that might be the case. It's not available, it's not easy, it's not something that's there for me, or maybe I'm an employee who doesn't have access to all the same systems that a regular employee does. And so they don't have a way to share their voice. So, shock and awe moment, we really need to address that, as we've all been talking about today. It was a stat mentioned earlier in terms of how many people are looking to leave the workforce by David. But think about this for a second, too. How much we're all using technology day to day to do our jobs. Well, a significant majority, almost 2/3 of all employees, are saying they actually are not happy with what they have day to day to do their jobs in terms of tools and technology. And 2/5 of them are talking about how they can't find what they want in terms of content to do what they're going to do. Now, is this the only reason why people are making changes in their lives from an employee perspective? Of course not. But if this were you or someone that you are coaching one-to-one, which was a great session earlier today too, imagine how you would feel. And you might look to make a change as well. So why is this? Well, most employee, voice of the employee, whether they're surveys or non-survey related programs, they tend to look something like this. And there's nothing wrong with having this. These are critical points to unlock when you are considering becoming an employee or you successfully become a new employee and you go through an onboarding process. Of course, we have the traditional every once a year, tell us everything about how you feel about the company. There's a place for all of these critical life cycle moments where, as an employee, you should be able to say, this is a major moment, this is how I feel. But if this were working, why do 56% of employees say their company is horrible with feedback, getting it, using it, and only asking once or twice a year? So we would hypothesize that the reason why that is the case is we haven't made it convenient. We haven't made it convenient, we haven't opened up that continuous back and forth dialogue, and many of you are sharing all the different ways to combat that. But one of the ways we're going to talk about is unlocking digital channels that you are going to use every day. But before we pivot into that, just a few other things to think about, because this might be your program today. And what are some of the challenges that we are often hearing from companies that we're fortunate enough to be able to help? They might be missing feedback because they're not getting it right away. And what does that mean? So as mentioned earlier, getting feedback right away, all of the time, especially from someone that you coach. But what if you are an employee, a process has just changed in a store location, and you've gotten the new kind of training guidance, but something's not working. We're in a different kind of workplace. The ordering of products has shifted, the store design has shifted, and you have some feedback for the company, but you know what? Customers have feedback as well. And you need somewhere to go to share that right away. You can't wait for that annual or quarterly touch point, which is about you. It's actually not about your operational job. It's not about the customer experience from your perspective. It's about something totally different. So since you don't have an outlet, you miss feedback as an organization. If you're lucky to get it, or not, it might be incomprehensive. So what does that mean? Well, we're bringing our whole selves to work. And part of our whole selves to work is we're using technologies to really unlock our potential at work, which is another thing we talked about today. But the way that we're getting all of this data has no knowledge about how I feel in general. It's disconnected from the annual or quarterly surveys I might be submitting. It's disconnected from the technologies that I'm using. What task was I trying to do? What experience am I trying to unlock for the customer? A lot of that information around is missing. So you might get some data, but the context, the whole story is missing, which makes it hard to act. It makes it hard to act, and then when companies realize it's hard to act and try as they might, if they don't act, or if they act and don't share with their employees that they've acted, the employees feel disillusioned. They feel like they're not being heard. They feel like they're not being known. And that is a terrifying potential realization that an employee might feel that way. There are lots of ways to combat this. We think that a best-in-class and maybe more modern and digital native kind of program would engage you along the journey as you're trying to do something. And we'll talk about the systems that you might use day to day, like a Salesforce or the mobile app provided by your company. Or we mentioned GBG talked about updating their intranet. Intranet is a key location that sounds like for them as part of their redesign, it's an enablement and unlocking of their operational potential. It's the same thing for the Bank of America company. I know we missed them today, but we're fortunate enough to work with them and actually engage inside of their academy, where 200,000 of their employees use their intranet, and that's content to facilitate their day-to-day tasks. So that's where they are. Go with where your employees are, where they might get that opportunity or pain point, and they have something to share with you. The program should remove barriers. It shouldn't be a barrier in and of itself, where you might be like shouting into a black hole and you never hear back, and you may not be able to actually share what you want in the way that you want at the right time that you want. It's gotta be easy for you, right, as an employee. And it should accelerate digital transformation. It should be part of the reason why our job gets easier over time. And it should be a continuous loop. It should come with something back to you as an employee. So the companies that tend to do this more often, we find they're 3.5 times more likely to receive feedback from their employees, at least monthly, than not. So with all of that information comes the opportunity to drive change. So if we think about most traditional programs today, or the company's perspective, our perspective on how onboarding works, our perspective of how training works, our perspective of why you're leaving the company, and it's us. The company is in control of that dialogue. What if we also unlocked the employee perspective of that dialogue? And we did it both proactively and passively. So quick show of hands, who's had a job change or maybe assumed new responsibilities or has become a recent new manager in the last year? I have, right? That's a major life event. How's that been like for you? Do you feel like you had the enablement that you needed, the training, the content, the support, setting up that coaching, right? How do you feel in that moment? And how do you feel ongoing? That is an opportunity where the company knows you're going through that process. And it's not the official recruitment or onboarding phase. It's a new manager phase. And they can reach out as that's happening for you, no matter what time in the year that that's happening, in the solution that you're probably using to facilitate that. And the other flip side of that is employees should have a way to share any improvement or innovation idea that they have as they have it. And that should be in a place where they click a button, they click a link, they reach a page, and all they have to do is type or record a video, whatever they're comfortable with, because that is gold. It's gold to help them, it's gold to help the company, it's gold to help the customers, and you are being collaborative as a team. And that really reminds me of the trust and inspiration talk earlier today. So, I'm gonna push us now, because this is uncomfortable, and I know it's not normal in our group. What is a digital channel, and why am I using that word a lot? My partner likes to make fun of me that she asks, what are you doing all day? And her answer is, well, he does something with digital. He says it about 20 times a day. So, I'm gonna define it as it's a channel of engagement. It's a channel of engagement of operational and a voice between the company and its employees. So what are some examples of those channels? And we've talked about some, and I've talked about some in passing. We're all, for example, collaborating through solutions like Slack. We're talking to each other in Zoom. We're logging activities in Salesforce. Tickets are being initiated and triggered in ServiceNow and managed by IT teams, right? All of this in some way or another is employee experience feedback or feedback-like signals that can all make the employee experience better. And they're being used on average, every enterprise organization, employees use at least 8 different solutions a day, most frequently. In reality, I've worked with organizations that talk about hundreds. Now, not all employees have access to those solutions. So that's part of the challenge. How do you make sure each one is unlocked? And we'll go into how you do that in a bit. What are they using this for? To do their job, to talk to each other, to get some self-coaching and enablement, or to ideate with their colleagues or with the company. But what are some challenges they're gonna run into with those technologies? Because technology is not always the answer. It needs help. And it's a channel of engagement. It doesn't mean that it's the most perfect channel. It needs to be optimized. It needs to be made to work for your employees, not what comes out of the box from the tech vendors. Well, it may not work. First of all, it may not work. They may not have access, or it doesn't support the thing that the employee wants to do. It may be unclear, the content may not be clear, and any support or help that you're looking for may not be timely. So to bring that to life, for example, let's say you go into Salesforce. Can anybody remember a time when Salesforce didn't exist and we didn't have that for CRM? I can't. So we log into CRM, we go to do a task. That task is impossible, and they abandon that task. What if, instead of nothing happening in that moment or waiting for the employee to tell us there's a problem, we dynamically reached out and said, hey, we know there's a problem here. You're taking longer than average. We've seen some kind of issue, and you know what? We want to know what's happening from your perspective right now. And you know why? Because if you can help tell us this, we can solve this for you, and we can prevent this from happening to any of your other colleagues, which is the greatest thing that we could do, because we want this to be as seamless and happy as an employee experience as possible. And the ways that you can do that can vary. You can ask questions about the technology. Is it easy to use? Does it help you do your job? Are you happy about the content? We mentioned that before. Or those moments that are normally trapped by email and normally only happen every month or every quarter. What if there was a way to click a button, or on a weekly kind of rolling continuous basis, you allowed everyone to participate in this program? Because again, not all employees might have access to email. And even if they have access to email, do they even see it? I haven't looked at my email inbox in 5 days. I'm not ashamed to admit it as a digital guy, but that's because everyone finds me on Slack. So email is a really formal thing that I have to stop what I'm doing and focus on a very intense experience and dialogue with the company. What if it was lighter? And what if it was easier for me to do all of the time? And so practicing what you preach has absolutely made a difference, even at Medallia. I've worked there for 8 years, and I remember before we actually had a Voice of the Employee practice and program. Now, all I have to do is log into Okta and our internal solution. I can click a button, and then I can easily submit feedback on anything that I want at that time and day. Doing things like this has led to a lot of the change that many of you covered today about flexible work programs, as well as work from anywhere. We've introduced the sabbatical program. That all came from employee feedback, from crowdsourcing, from buttons to click on. And I've even seen our IT organization do this as well. They submit tickets, and the tickets are also logged as feedback, and they've got this continuous loop to let us know that they've resolved the ticket, and they let us know if there's any outages in Slack, and emails to us if it's really that bad. And it's all to make sure that we are unblocked on doing our best jobs as employees, and making sure that we can get the most out of the technology that we use day to day, because it's not going anywhere. So that's just where we would share with you, there's an opportunity here. There's an opportunity to do what you're already doing and to copy it into additional channels in the flow of work, where all of your employees in some way are filling out a timesheet or looking for help in an intranet, and they could be a button or a end of task flow away, where you can, for example, like Vanguard, engage with 17,000 employees on a continuous basis. And I shared Bank of America's over 200,000 employees that are continuously providing feedback from employee feedback. This is all part of a larger program where you can do this continuously. Feedback, ideas, non-feedback, those tickets that normally just IT sees, it all affects the employee experience. It should all come into some one unified place for you to all see that, so that you can understand the impact of this, because employee experience and customer experience is a combination of everything that happens to us in our life cycle, and it all rolls up into how we feel about the company. And the biggest thing is to make sure to act on it. Another thing that Holly shared earlier, you have to be able to drive action, close the loop, share what you're doing in a one-to-many fashion, not just in personal channels. And I'll just leave you with this. 2 things for the employee, for the company, as everyone has also been ending their conversations. When you do this, employees feel like they're heard. They want to be heard. They want to be part of the solution. They want to share, and they want to help you drive change. When they feel like that's happening, and that's a place of inspiration that they work at, they do perform their best work. And of course, the companies that unlock this also do the best in the industries based on our research as well. So thank you so much for sharing and for your time today. Happy to answer any questions that you might have out at the booth or in the back. Thank you.